Last mission was very successful. I actually cut off the video and I was still speaking, and I didn't show you guys that this was a super successful mission. I killed 1 tank, 3 trucks, and 1 BF-110, so Messerschmitt 110. So it was super successful. Unfortunately, there was a bug. This happens in the cup mode once in a blue moon. Okay. Very, very rarely. What happens is the ground swallows the plane and the plane just dies. I don't know why it's happening. I don't know why it's caused. It happens sometimes. It's a problem. But this campaign is now basically concluded. We did the Crimea. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do a new campaign. We're gonna go after Crimea. So I'm gonna do it now, just to show you guys. We're gonna go with. We're gonna be much late then. I'm fine with being. Low peon and take orders from guys. That's okay. We're gonna be a fighter. Everything should be the same. Not playing my pack, no maniac, no hurt. Okay. Everything is cool. Everything is cool. We're gonna start and we're gonna go with Kuban. Yes. We're gonna go with the same unit. Well, hold on. Let's go with the guards. We are now guards. Why not? Let's not go with Yak 1. Okay. Let's go with Yak 1B because we are a guards regiment, guards unit, so we get the best equipment. Let's see. Let's go with Yak. I think the Yak 9 was actually worse than the Yak B, so. Well, no, hold on. Yak 9. Okay, let's go with Yak 1B. Here we go with Yak 9. I just want the best planes I can get. Hold on. We're going from the Kuban. Oh, there's 2 Kubans here, 42 and 43. I see. Yak 9D is the version which flies for a long. Do we have LA5 here? We don't. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So here's what we're gonna do. We don't have one here, so we're gonna go with Yak 9. Here we're gonna go with LA5 or 5F. No, we're gonna go with. Let's see the progression. 5F and FN. Yes. We're gonna see the Lavochkins in action. Hopefully, if it doesn't fuck up. P4. Oh god, no, not P40. There's an Air Cobra which is 1944, but there's a Yak 3 which is 1944. What's screwing me up is the naming convention of this thing. Because Yak 1 is older than Yak 9. It's wacky. Okay, Smolensk. Let's see. The new Yak 9K. K is, I think, the one with the huge ass cannon. So that should be fun. Let's see it. There's a K and a U. I think K and a U are the ones with the derpy cannons. So let's go with the U and Berlin. We're gonna go with LA7. Hell to the yes, bitches. Either B20, 3 times B20. No, we're just gonna go with the normal one. And we're gonna go with Moscow, Crimea, Kuban, which is probably Kursk, right? That's what I'm assuming. No, it's before Stalingrad. Okay, we're gonna generate. And strong German forces have broken through the Don front into Rostov. Okay, of course, cannot stop the German advancing right now. Well, the main German advance used to be towards the Volga. Oh, this is 1942. This is Operation Blau. They're not going for Stalingrad, everybody. They're going for the Caucasus. I know that in America and the United States, no, United States and the UK, they're teaching you that the Germans are idiots and they went for Stalingrad and they got stuck there. That's not what happened. Stop reading American British history and stop believing American British historians. They're terrifyingly bad. The Germans actually were not stupid. That's number one. Anybody who takes over half the continent is not stupid. All right, that's number one. So what they did was in 1941 they did three-pronged advance. There were three strategic directions: north, center, and south, towards Leningrad, Moscow, and towards the south, which is basically Rostov and the Volga. And the aim was not to gain territory or to go for Leningrad or to go for Moscow. They didn't give a shit about that, despite what modern histories tell you. They did not give a shit. What they tried to do was encircle as many divisions and kill off and capture as many Soviet soldiers as they could. And they had a timetable and they had a table of enemy casualties and enemy POWs that they needed to inflict on the enemy, which is the Soviet Union, to win. And guess what? Barbarossa was a success. They actually inflicted the number of casualties that they wanted, and according to their calculations, the Soviet Union, after getting those, people, losing all those people, captured and killed, they should have fallen down. The calculations were correct. They did. Barbarossa was a success. They did destroy the Red Army in the first few weeks. Guess what? The Soviet Union did not surrender. They had a second wave, second echelon of units, and a third wave, third echelon of units. They were much more ruthless in using their manpower. For example, in 1943-44, they were running out of manpower, totally, and the Germans could see it. What happened was, when they took over a territory, they drafted every male they could into the Red Army. It didn't matter if you're Ukrainian, Belarusian, Mongolian, Asian, Kalmuk, Gypsy. It did not matter. Jew, Polish, it didn't matter. They drafted you. They took you in, minimal training, and filled up the divisions again. You learn on the job. If you don't survive, you suck. Too bad. If you survive, the veterans will teach you how to survive, how to kill the Germans. And that's what happened. The Germans couldn't do that because when they took over the territory, nobody wanted to fight for them, despite limited numbers of people wanted to fight for them. But they were the occupiers. Meanwhile, the Russians, the Soviets, were the quote-unquote liberators. So they had much more success recruiting, impressing people to fight for them. And they were ruthless about it too. They were ruthless. You didn't want to fight for them as then you're a collaborator, and you know what happens to collaborators? They get shot. Not only that, their families get shot. So chances are you wanted to join the Red Army or else. So anyway, Barbarossa was a success. 1941, except it failed because the Soviet Union did not surrender. So now in 1942, Hitler and OKW, Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, their general staff, their high command, said, okay, we failed. We took so many prisoners, we killed so many people, they should have surrendered, they didn't. Obviously, now we're in a grind because they have many more people than we thought. They had more divisions than we thought. What are we going to do? Panic. What they decided for 1942 after the Moscow winter counteroffensive, the big shock that they got, was, okay, we have to take their ability to wage war. We already took 1/3 or 1/3 of the territory, or 2/3 of their manpower, because most of the manpower was in Western Russia, Western Soviet Union, which is Ukraine, Belarus, those places. The farther east you go, the more sparsely populated you are, really, and less factories, etc. So what we decided to do is, okay, let's go for resources, let's go for the oil, let's go for the factories. The oil was in the south, the Baku area, in the Caucasus. So the Germans calculated that, the Axis powers, the Germans calculated that, first of all, You take their oil, they're going to die. And the same thing happened with the Soviet Union. They went for Romania. They went for Ploesti. This was the main priority in 1943-44. After Ukraine, they said, we have to take Ploesti, take their oil away. And they were correct. Once we took the oil away, the German Luftwaffe and tanks, they had less and less gasoline, so the pilots and tankers couldn't practice. The American pilots, when they, and British pilots, when they did their strategic bombing over Germany, they noticed that fact that, hey, the German pilots are worse and worse. Why? Because they didn't have gasoline to practice. They barely had gasoline and diesel to fly because they lost Ploesti. The Germans tried to do the same thing to the Soviet Union in the Baku area in the Caucasus. So, the Caucasus, they went towards Stalingrad, yes, but mostly it was to cut Volga. They didn't want Stalingrad per se. They wanted Stalingrad because it was a railroad hub. Remember, World War II. Railroads are the 80–90% of transports of supplies that go to the military, that go to the armies, are using railroads. It was kind of different in the Western Front because the Western Allies were so rich in trucks and motorized transport that they actually had something called the Red Bull Express, and they actually used trucks, hundreds of thousands of trucks, literally, to supply their armies. It didn't work out for them actually because they ran out of supplies. In 1944, you can read or listen to watch some YouTube Patton documentaries. He was pissed because they had to stop. And they had to decide on one axis of advance. They couldn't do a broad axis of advance like the Germans in 41 and Allies in 44, Western Allies in 44, because they ran out of fuel. That's why they went with Montgomery's plan to attack only on one direction, the north, Holland, which is the Dutch, and do that. And they stopped the offensive on the other directions, including Patton's, and Patton was pissed, rightly so, in my opinion, because they didn't have enough fuel. Because the Red Bull Express, without the trains, could only go so far, and the trains were totally fucked up, destroyed by the Western Air Campaign to prevent the Germans using them in France. So, double-edged sword. Anyway, the Germans in 42 went for Baku, Caucasus. That's where the oil is, not the factories. They got they got about 2/3 of the armor-producing factories, and most of them were in the western area, so they were under German occupation. So they said, okay, we have to take their oil, which was the correct decision. How do you do that? Two things. Number one, the oil is they're using barges to sail up the Volga. So, excuse me. So once you take Stalingrad and or any areas next to the Volga, which they did, so success, they cut the barge traffic, the ship traffic from Caucasus to the north, to Moscow and beyond. So those supplies were cut. Number two, Stalingrad was a railroad hub. They didn't really take it. They almost took it. So basically a success. They cut off the railroad transportation from the Caucasus to the north. The Soviets had to reroute the trains. Number three, they went to the Caucasus and they failed. Caucasus is mountains. And despite their calculations that the local population would help them, because the people, the Chechens and Ingushets and different minorities hated communism and hated Russians and still do. Like most normal people who hate, people hate Russians. It's just a thing in Europe, trust me. Anyway, so they hated Russians and they really hated them. To the point that they joined the Germans into volunteer units, Kalmyks. There were whole divisions of Kalmyks and Chechens, but what was called Kalmyks, cavalry divisions, anti-partisan, and just huge volunteer formations, divisions, regiments, volunteers. The Germans basically, they went to the Germans and said, give us weapons, we want to kill Russians, we want to kill the communists. And the Germans said, oh, okay, no problem. So despite that, they must calculate it, because a lot of this population was resettled by Stalin and KVD, Beria's secret police. They basically took whole cities, whole villages, because they saw that they weren't reliable, and they put them on a train. And those that didn't want to go, well, you didn't have a choice. You were shot. So they went, more or less voluntarily, quote unquote, and they get resettled in Siberia and different places. So the population that the Germans counted on was not there. Secondly, Caucasus Mountains. Uh, in Hearts of Iron 4, you can attack through the mountains with no problem, because it's shit. Okay, it's just some Swedish idiots making a war game. In reality, attacking through the mountains is, well, you tried. It's horrible. It's horrifying. This is Defender's Paradise. So even the Soviet soldiers who were beaten, who retreated from in front of Stalingrad, several armies were encircled there. There was a Timoshenko offensive in 1942, which is not really taught in America and Britain. It was huge. The Germans were in big, perilous situation. Look it up in Wikipedia, look it up online. Timoshenko's offensive, 1942. The Soviets made huge gains. What happened was the Germans were at the peak of their powers then, and they transferred several ground attack units, aircraft, mostly Stukas and HE-111s, and some Jagdgeschwader, some fighters to support them. That's number one. And number two, they got some Panzer and motorized divisions, and they cut off. They basically encircled the enemy, and they made a castle. They made an encirclement, bagged an army or two. Huge Soviet losses, hundreds of thousands of prisoners, and they were killed. And the area before Stalingrad was denuded of troops because they were all used by Timoshenko, prodded by Zhukov, prodded by Stalin, to counterattack, because the Soviets were always about attacking. They didn't feel confident defending. Their whole training was attack, which is what they did. So Timoshenko's offensive got fucked. They got encircled. The Soviet troops were supposed to defend Stalingrad while we were taken into that offensive. So they got captured. So now we have basically almost nothing from Stalingrad. So there's there's a flight. There's a huge, it's not a retreat, it's a flight into Stalingrad. They're running away from their lives, and Paulus's 6th Army and Romanians and Hungarians are pursuing. And then I believe Kleist, I'm not 100% sure, but they separated from this attack on the Stalingrad axis, and they went into the Caucasus. So there were two separate actions, one in the Caucasus, one in the Stalingrad. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're starting this campaign to defend this area, I believe. So we'll see how it goes.